So what can we do behind the scenes? Today we're talking about Julius Caesar, so let's get into it. So a bit of background, intro into the situation. Obviously Julius Caesar is from the Julii family, an old aristocratic family, but basically by the time of Julius Caesar, their wealth and power had thoroughly ebbed, and they didn't even live on the Palatine Hill anymore. Palatine Hill being like the Beverly Hills of Rome, and his family was totally off the hill, so to speak. And so I like how one historian basically put it, that his whole life all he was doing was trying to climb back up the hill, literally. And another point about Caesar that really points to his utter confidence in himself was in his early life when he was abducted by pirates, how they actually asked for 20 talents for his return, and that in equivalent to $130,000. And when they told him that, he actually was again allegedly to have said that, how could you only ask for 20? I'm obviously worth at least 50 talents. So again, Julius Caesar, everybody, truly triumphed with Crassus, the richest man in Rome, and Pompey, the greatest general in Rome at the time. And he got his position in Gaul, which he then conquered the whole of Gaul, which is modern-day France, killing 1 million people, or rather 2% of the population. Alright, and after that, his term was up, and the situation developed badly that he was for the populace, the plebs, the citizens of the Roman Republic, and he used them to gain power and not depended on the aristocracy. The old school senators, on the other hand, wanted to keep things status quo, keep their power of nobility and everything like that. And so naturally, like I said, the bad thing was these two sides started to contest each other. And so when Caesar's term was up in Gaul, they asked him to basically come back to Rome without his legions, give up power, and it probably would have been obviously political suicide, but also, like many historians say, he probably would have been killed. So this left Caesar with two choices. One was that he come back to Rome and without any protection or bodyguard, or at least basically cross the Rubicon and become another Sulla and start another civil war. Obviously he chose with the 13th Legion to cross the Rubicon, but that was not surprising, as again another historian in a documentary stated how Caesar really epitomized the line Carpe Diem, which is seize the day. His whole life he'd been taking risks, calculated risks, mind you, and that's the thing I like about Caesar, is that he does everything with a goal. He doesn't just do things because, for example, he doesn't massacre a town or Gauls because it was the fun thing to do. He did it because it sent a message, such as when he cut off both arms of every Gallic prisoner he got, 2,000 of them at one point, and then sent them out into villages to warn that they should not rise up against Rome after the defeat of Vercingetorix and all that, after he consolidated in Gaul basically. And there is another one where Caesar was alleged to have said, and it's a very good line, it really fits Julius Caesar, I feel. Maybe not in a literal sense of what he would have done, but I like it represents him. He alleged to have said that he'd rather be the first man in a village than a second man in Rome. And on a small note, you know, the crossing the Rubicon, you know, there's such a, you know, idealized picture in your head of him crossing past the Rubicon with the 13th Legion behind him, when actually the Rubicon is basically a stream. And so, you know, probably it would be a very bumpy ride across, and nothing like the, you know, idealized picture of him like that and crossing. But probably in real life it would have been like, you know, like this. And as Caesar was crossing past the Rubicon down to Rome, it is said, again allegedly, that 80,000 people came to join his army. But at the same time, is it an absolute exaggeration? Probably not, because this was a very popular man with the populace. You have to imagine, alright, that this is like in today. If you had The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, go to Afghanistan, beat the Taliban and capture all their leaders, or that's how popular this guy is. He basically had achieved everything an idealized Roman wanted to do, so to speak. And even when he was in Gaul fighting, at one point his supporters actually burnt down the Senate house. You know, the house of Roman republicanism was burned down by Caesar's supporters. So this guy was no slouch in the charisma sector. So first thing I think that really comes out in the Roman Civil War is the navies. Now in the game, you have ships around the Mediterranean and everything like that, but you don't have that many. And that's understandable. The Romans were always much more of a land power, and the ships were mostly used for transport and supply, such as when Caesar finally did take Rome and all that. Pompey had taken the navy around the area and basically transported all his troops to Greece, where his support was, and Caesar couldn't follow. All right, so of course the problem was that everybody's loyalties are split. All these resources of the Roman Empire were basically split between who you supported, Caesar or Pompey. Like example, pirates, all right, could always be used, like with Spartacus and all that, but do you trust them? And you know, basically you have to pay a lot for their support. And because Rome, although owned an empire, their focus was never truly the navy. I mean, they had a good navy. So throughout the whole thing, you see constantly, example, especially Caesar's faction, constantly building new navies in a rush. Example, it took Caesar almost 1 full year to build a navy to transport his troops into Greece to fight Pompey. And then at Dyrrhachium, he was in fact cut off on supply because his navy was basically non-existent at that point compared to Pompey's. And another factor that really shows how much the navy played a lesser role in the fighting was when the 1 year when Caesar was not able to cross into Greece, he actually went towards Spain and to handle the situation there and take care of Pompey's legions in Spain. And when he reached Massilia in southern France, you know, one of Pompey's supporters came over and again started to stir trouble. And in 30 days, he started to build another navy. So the thing is, he built the navy with unseasoned wood. It wasn't made to last. But again, Roman engineering was fantastic, and he built the navy, but it would never last. And this is shown in game, whereby, you know, especially the shifting loyalties, the pirate situations, and basically people the pirates taking advantage of the situation of the Civil War and all, where you can't transport your troops amphibiously unless the turn before you actually have your navy totally control the sea. You know, you can't in the turn itself move a ship unit into the sea and have it connected and move, and then use another movement point to move a troop across the seas. You have to own it first. Alright, they have to stay in the sea the whole turn, then you can move it. And on top of that, each movement point only allowed you to move 1 legion. Alright, which is very little. And the navy is not enough to the point where they could fight off the enemy and still transport legions across the sea. So again, that really makes you feel the situation with Pompey and Caesar had, whereby, you know, you want to control the seas, but you don't have that many ships. You know, again, there's only limited amount of ships, but you feel that tightness. Another thing about the Roman Civil War was how movement was very methodical. I think the Roman Civil War basically took about 4 years for Caesar to fight. And in the game, this is felt because each time you move, even if you wanted to attack, you need 1 extra movement. That really is cool because, again, it doesn't add that many rules to the game, but it's supposed to represent all kinds of things, such as hostile population, supply problems, sieges, obviously, so on and so forth. So, you know, just like Caesar and Pompey, each side were veteran generals, and they both knew that rushing into a situation was not the Roman way. The Roman way was, you know, very much the goal, which was victory. This leads back to an old story which I like to tell. There were Romans basically sieging a city, and the city came out to boast how they had 10 years worth of supplies to last. And the Roman general came out and said, well, we will then wait 11 years. And the city just capitulated. Probably exaggeration, but again, I like that fact that the Romans were methodical and they made sure to basically do the thing that wins the war. And so this is again applied into the game Julius Caesar. The amount of turns is really short, and each card you play, you know, only gives you so many movement points. So if you waste it, you know, you give a huge leg up to a person who could either surround you in the game or pull his forces into a major force where you have to retreat and maybe lose a huge city, maybe even like Egypt. Another point of the Roman Civil War that really comes out in the game is the whole play on shifting loyalties in the game. This comes out really strongly in the histories, of course, is when you read about, for example, Labienus, who fought with Caesar in Gaul, and in fact at one point was the tribune of the plebs. backed up by Caesar, turned against Caesar. You know, this is represented in the game with the Jupiter card, alright, which can turn a legion that you pick randomly from the opponent's side and bring it to your side if you are adjacent. And the Jupiter card really makes you feel the unease of, you know, putting strong legions, especially if they are known, the location is known. You're very afraid to put them alone, because they played the Jupiter card, they literally take that legion, you know, example the 13th Legion. Now I prefer if they actually put some historical context in the card instead of putting the gods, but I guess they just simplified everything. So again, it represents what it's supposed to do really well, a lot of the cards, you know, and all this culminated in Pharsalus on the 9th of August, and on a short note, 9th of August is the National Day of Singapore, you know, just one of those little facts, and I'm from Singapore, so, I really like this fact, although today we're not talking about Pharsalus. The thing is that both armies were armed the same way, and they had not enough time to really differentiate themselves from one legion to another. Alright, and so to identify themselves during the battle, what Pompey and Caesar did was both sides had passwords so they could identify each other. And Pompey basically chose Hercules the Unconquered, and Caesar chose Venus to bring out victory as their password. And again, this is one of those really fascinating facts about how civil wars was such a, how you say, brother versus brother situation, and be it Pharsalus or basically the whole Roman Civil War, Pompey's troops were basically new recruits and Caesar's were the veterans of Gaul. And very much so, you feel that in the game, because Caesar's legions are basically all much better in strength and fighting in the game. In fact, your Pompey, you tend to want to avoid a battle when there's even numbers, mostly in the game. So you really feel that, and you know, you also feel this confidence when you're fighting as Caesar, especially with his stronger legions. And in history, how Sabin, a historian who actually makes historical board games, in fact, war games, he came out and said that how Caesar will come out and tell his men, although we are outnumbered, we will win because you are Caesar's legion. And you feel that, and it's really cool, you know, again, how the game represents when you're playing Caesar. You're not really afraid to fight most of the time, unless you're outnumbered by a huge lot. The next thing that really comes out in the game is the levies. Now, every turn you get the movement, and then you can do levies. And basically, you can levy wherever you are in the game. And some might complain maybe that, for example, in Greece, how could Caesar gain, you know, basically support, as seeing as that whole area was Pompey's support. I like the fact that they reduced the amount of rules, but it represents the situation that there was support everywhere for each person. Alright, it's just where you search, be it mercenaries. An example, not only were the levies Romans, many times in like places like Egypt, Namibia, Pontus, and so on, you could levy local kings to give you support. You know, in fact, on the Pompeian side, after Pompey died, Caesar had to go up and beat in Pontus Pharnaces II for rising up. Talking about history, this is also a period of history which is really cool, that it teaches you one thing about evidence, especially if you study in university and further, is that sources can't be trusted just because they're sources. Julius Caesar, a lot of the contemporary kind of history comes from his own writings, firstly, so obviously it's quite biased. A lot of the historians are writing under the emperors, which were, well, under the system that Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar set up. The simple example is two of what happened. One is, example, who killed Pompey? You might say, oh, it's obvious, right? But trust me, I have read and I have seen a lot of documentaries which totally vary. Some say that Pompey was killed by pirates that transported him to Egypt. Some say Ptolemy gave the order. Some said a centurion of Pompey's killed him. You know, it's literally where you read. Another one is, of course, when Caesar finally was stabbed on the Ides of March. There's some sources vary totally from 22 times, 25 times, 35 times, and so on and so forth. Again, believing Suetonius and so on. So, you know, evidence, take it for what it will, but always be careful to not say something like, and this happens somewhat often, is when someone says, you know, this happened for sure. No, we're not sure, even if the thing is sure. You know, you can say it's basically you have a very strong sense of truth there, but to say 100% probably is not true. And the last fact, before we leave, how a bit of history on how Julius Caesar ended. Caesar won the wars, the civil wars, and he started to do some somewhat tyrannical things, such as even coming out and naming an entire month, Julius, which today is called July, mind you, after himself. And of course he was killed, again with the same thing, how made you feel how much the whole betrayal aspect of it. He was killed, one of his oldest friends, the son of his mistress, Brutus, which said this is what happened to tyrants. And the most ironic thing is he died in the Curia, which was built by Pompey under the statue of Pompey the Great, and thus ended one of the greatest men in history. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you want history from any other period or game, or did I miss something really interesting. Let me know. Thank you very much. Till next word.